Okay, well, we'll just call the Royal Oak Environmental Advisory Board meeting to order. Erin, do you want to do the roll call?
I'd be honored. Ms. Acevedo.
Here in Royal Oak.
Commissioner Douglas.
Here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Guntino.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. Hartwig.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. Herzog.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. Lemmy is not here, right? Mr. Long.
Here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Marcelletti.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. McMahon is not with us. Mr. Regan.
Here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Sarpalis.
Here in Royal Oak.
And Mr. Vial.
Here in Royal Oak.
Great. So the next thing on our agenda is the approval of the March 24th, that's not right, April. That should be April. It should be today's agenda. So that's the first thing we need to change. And then I would like to make two changes. One is to remove the approval of the March 24th meeting minutes. We don't have them, and I will get us up to date on all of our minutes for our next meeting. And then the other change I would like to do is move the community garden work group up from number 10 to number 7 right before the reports, just because I think all of our guests tonight are for the garden, so they don't have to sit through our whole meeting. We can get to the garden, the community garden stuff earlier. So is there a motion with those changes to the agenda?
Well, can I offer something, Amanda?
Oh, sure. Yep.
Ann Buki is here as well to discuss the Royal Oak tree canopy. I was going to just sort of briefly intro that in my comments. And so that might also be something good to go after the garden group, if the group's okay with that. So
Sure. So we'll have the community garden at 7, and then the Royal Oak tree canopy with Ann on number 8.
Yep.
And then we'll go into the reports.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a motion for those changes?
I will move to approve the agenda with the stated amendments.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and then we have to do the roll call vote.
Excuse me, Ms. Acevedo.
Yes.
Ms. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Guntino.
Yes.
Ms. Hartwig.
Yes.
Ms. Herzog.
Yes.
Ms. Lemmy. She's not here. Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Marcelletti.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Sarpalis.
Yes.
And Mr. Vial.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so Julie has arranged for us to have a guest speaker at our meeting, so I'm going to hand it over to Julie.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce Mac McCabe from Michigan Saves, and he's going to talk a little bit about alternative financing options. Again, we're having these speakers to help us consider how in the future, when we get to the point of implementation for the sustainability plan around residential efficiencies and commercial efficiencies, some of the tools that we can have in our toolkit to help that move forward. So without further ado, I'll introduce Mac McCabe, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I started working with Michigan Saves a couple years ago. I grew up in Madison Heights, and I worked in Royal Oak for about 10 years. Love the area, so this is kind of really cool for me. But Michigan Saves is a nonprofit. Actually, we are the nation's first green bank. And what our entire goal, our mission is to advance energy efficiency and renewables. And we do that through financing. So the way that we do that is we had back in 2010 through the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, we received some funding through the state of Michigan and created a loan loss reserve. So through that loan loss reserve, what we do is we've got several $1 million in the bank, and we lend out. We went out to local credit unions, and we struck deals with them and said, okay, we want your best rates. So we offer below market rates. We also have the lowest credit requirements. So in exchange for that, we pay a certain percentage of every loan that defaults that we write. And so that allows us to kind of put our foot on the scales of all of our eligible measures. And that is high efficiency, heating and cooling equipment, solar, geothermal, basically any type of renewable energy. We also do some generators and some things that are, as long as they're matched with energy efficiency. But for the most part, it's high efficiency equipment that we're financing. And we do that on the residential side as well as the commercial side. So we're a contractor-based program. So we're a group of contractors that we go out, sell the financing through the contractors, but we also do quality assurance on all the work that they do. So we check their licensing, we check their insurance, and then we also do quality assurance on a certain percentage of the jobs that they install. So we feel we've got a great group of contractors. Not everybody gets in, and we've had to, eject very few people, but it's a really good group of contractors that you can trust with financing that makes sense from energy and energy efficiency and renewables. We do this on the commercial side as well, where the same rules apply as far as the efficiency and renewables. And what we've done is we went out, because it's, there's a difference between the residential and commercial financing protocols and rules. So we have a group of lenders that we went out, pitched the same thing. They use the same loan loss reserve system to get the best rates and the lowest credit requirements. But we also, I would say 90% of the loans that we write are through the utility program. So we have programs where we partner with DTE, Consumers Energy, and Semco Gas to do a utility sponsored buy down. So if you do, say, an LED project, there's a substantial amount of rebates that go along with that project. The customer keeps those rebates, but the utility has basically doubled that rebate and said, okay, we'll double that amount and use that amount to buy down the interest rate. So a lot of the projects that we do through the utility buy down program are 0% interest loans. All of our loans are unsecured, and there are certain ones on the commercial side when we get into big boilers and chillers that will do this. It's called the UCC filing, which is just a sort of a lien. But on the residential side, everything is an unsecured loan. We've got rates as low as 3.99%. Our highest rate for credit challenged customers is 7%, which still for an unsecured product is a really decent rate to have. And we also, our minimum credit requirement is 600. So it really brings a lot more people into energy efficiency and renewables that normally wouldn't be there. And that's really our mission. And we've got a lot of contractors that realize that, and they're out now. They're selling higher efficient equipment that they normally would have, sold an 80% efficient, piece of, let's just say it's a furnace. They normally would have sold that, but since they have Michigan Saves financing, they would go up to the 95% to get those favorable rates for their customers. So it really kind of brings more people into efficiency and renewables. So we just recently, on the residential side, noticing that our competition is growing in Michigan financing, we've come up with some promotional products where we have a 0% product, where typically if you do financing at 0%, if you don't pay it off within that 12-month period, it jumps up to like 26%, and it's kind of predatory. Michigan Saves came out with a way that we could do that 0% promotion, which is a great sales tool for contractors. But at the end of it, it's the same loan you would have gotten for whatever you qualified for through Michigan Saves. So we've come up with some creative ways to, keep up with the competition, but really keep it clean and what's best in the best interest for our customer. And that's Michigan Saves in a nutshell. We're growing. We've just hired 3 people in the last 3 months, so it's been a pretty big change at Michigan Saves. But we're growing. There's a lot of interest. We in our first 8 years we did $100 million, and since that time we're right on the verge of 300 million. So in the last couple of years, it really snowballed. So it took us a while to get some traction and get our feet under us, but now it's really starting to roll. So I'll take any questions, or if you have any, questions in the future, I can, leave my number in the chat or something.
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Andrew.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. I actually have a couple questions. So okay. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about credit challenged customers, because, you may already know this, but just to give context for anyone watching the recording, anyone else in the committee, I have looked at energy burden in Michigan pretty substantially. I mean, not me personally, I work with people every day that they share information with me about the maps and, energy burden. We have extremely high energy burden in the state, partially because we have really old housing stock. And we have a lot of low-income communities living in that housing stock, and we have really cold winters. So, you make it sound like there's really generous opportunities for these communities. You talk about very low interest rates, working with credit challenged customers that have lower rates. I wonder what you feel, because we do, even though these financing mechanisms are available, we still do have such a gap, in terms of these high energy burdens, and especially in Detroit, but in Oakland County communities as well, like Pontiac, Royal Oak Township. How do we close that gap? What's missing that's not getting the financial capital of these communities is my first question. And my second question is somewhat related, that we have a lot of minority-owned businesses that could be doing this sort of work. And I was wondering, you said you work with contractors on these projects, and I wonder if you have any sort of eye towards building businesses in some of these economically challenged communities by supporting some of these contractors. So I just wondering if you could share a little more about some of that stuff.
Yeah, that was some really good stuff there, Andrew. Thank you. And, it feels like you were at our last Michigan Saves meeting, because these are exactly the things that came up. We have been at our last board meeting. We went through a 5-day, diversity and equity and inclusion challenge, where we really dug into how our credit system works and how we can open that up to credit challenged customers, but also minority owned businesses, and a couple things. We came up with a couple things. So as it stands right now, we went out to all of our credit unions, and we wanted their very lowest rates. And we had one credit union that reduced their credit requirements and created a credit challenge program. And then 3 others followed suit. So it was one of those things where we just really had to push hard on one, and then the rest fell in line. So 600 being a pretty low threshold, we feel is a good start, but nowhere near where we have to be. There's a big gap there. Some of the things that we've done is we're working with the utilities to do on-bill financing. So we're doing an on-bill financing program in Traverse City and one in Holland, and we're working on one with Consumers Energy. And what OnBill does, whoever's not familiar with it, is it allows the customer, instead of having a credit score, all they have to do is have a payment history with the utility, and then they qualify for the financing. And it goes on the bill. It can stay with the property. It's a really good way to provide financing for the masses. So there's no credit requirement that's involved. It's been pretty successful in Holland. Traverse City just started. And like I said, we're in talks with consumers. And the other minority owned businesses that we were trying to figure out how Michigan Saves can really participate in that. And, we kind of fell short in that we want to pay attention to our minority owned businesses that are within Michigan Saves. But then we started creating a group of people that are, they're identifying what we can do to get minority businesses in the energy efficiency field. So we had a couple HVAC contractors, a couple home performance contractors. Home Performance is doing air sealing and insulation. So we got a couple of them together, and we're creating like somewhat of a training protocol that we can go to, communities of color and try to get more business owners to do that. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but I think it's the best that I have with what Michigan Saves is doing right now.
Yeah, I also follow up on that. Have you partnered with any governments on trying to do outreach to these businesses or residents, or do you think that's an opportunity that governments looking at sustainability could be working with you guys to get businesses trained and interested in this field, or get more people informed about these financing options? Is that something you've explored at all?
Yeah, I know within our organization, we have, I'm with the outreach team, so I know that we are going out to contractors, and our major partners are utilities. I know that we have worked with government organizations. I couldn't tell you exactly that. That's above my pay grade, but that's a really good idea. As far as what that can produce, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that directly because I don't have any specific examples of our government work, but I do know that Mary Templeton, our CEO, is very involved. That's kind of one of her lanes is dealing with government organizations, not only with Michigan, but I know that we've been in contact with some people in Washington, mostly regarding, financing for green or clean energy.
So if I could hop in, I've got kind of a sample, an example question. So let's say a homeowner wanted to or needed a roof, because I'm trying to think of how this could be integrated with a roof. So let's say the homeowner needs a roof. That's something you have to do. Would this program cover the cost to do the roof with traditional roofing materials or whatever, but then also pay the cost to install roof-mounted solar and the cost associated with interfacing that with the existing electrical system in a home? Would that be that sort of project that could fall into the scope?
All of it. Yeah. So the only thing that we would for sure we do with the renewable part, the integration into your electrical system. If there was a battery system, we would integrate that as well. The only thing that would be required is that the roofing material that you use be Energy Star rated or equivalent. So there's like CertainTeed has a Solaris type shingle that has a certain emissivity, and we took all those colors and said the equivalent for Timberland and GAF will accept those colors as well. So we have a pretty wide selection of roofing colors, but they're all light. Like if you're looking for a dark roof, we can't do that, but everything else is good.
Thank you.
Tom, I know you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, just wondering, every time I log into Facebook, I see these ads for, and I never click them because I assume they're a scam, where you can get a whole house battery and photovoltaic cells on your roof and with no money down, and it'll pay for itself in reductions in your electric bill. Is that even remotely feasible, or is that, I'm just assuming it's BS, but.
Well, It's definitely feasible. I think I know the company's Power Home Solar, and they do a lot of marketing. And they do a tremendous job at getting the word out about solar. I've never had specific dealings with them, except once I was on a panel. We were the financing person, and there was two solar contractors, and there was some questions that were asked about the payback of solar. And the guy from Power Home came up and he said, the payback's about 4 to 4.5 years. And the guy from the other company, I think it was Homeland Solar, almost fell off his chair. It was just one of those things that it's not 4.5. It was closer to 9 to 13 is a payback. 13 if you get a battery backup. But so there's a lot of misinformation about the time frame. The actual installation can be paid for or paid by itself or pays for itself within 9 years. No doubt that happens. And there's a lot of financing out there where they push the terms out to 20 or 25 years because that's the life cycle of the product. So you can get your really low payment where the sales technique is they're out there doing switching your electrical bill for your solar bill. And that only happens when you have those long loan terms. But so yes, it is possible. It just, watch out for who you're using out there. Commissioner.
Yes. How do people, perhaps I missed this at the beginning, how do people pay back the loan?
Monthly payments.
So it's just a standard loan.
Yep.
Deal. So.
Yep. It's just a standard loan, unsecured. So there's no collateral.
Then you're the last resort to if the borrower defaults, then it comes back on Michigan Saves, right?
Yeah. So we cover any defaults that happen through Michigan Saves. And, we've noticed that people that are investing in energy efficiency and renewables typically don't default. We've had a really good success rate.
Good. And I asked that only because just like within the past couple of days, ProPublica ran an article about some states that are running PACE programs. Only people pay for it through their property taxes.
Right.
And it's all about people, homes going up for foreclosure because people can't pay their property taxes and obviously can't pay the loan that they got for the energy savings. But yours is different.
Yep. Christine.
You said that you're going to be working with Consumers Power.
Mm-hmm. We're actively working with them to do an on-bill program, but it's kind of in the beginning, maybe the middle stages.
Well, I was really happy to hear that because I've been going through old paperwork in my house and I stumbled across old Consumers Power bills where when we first moved into our house, Consumers had a list of recommended contractors and we signed up to have insulation put in our attic.
Okay.
And then it must have been a super deal because I noticed on our bill, it was only like an extra $6 a month. I don't know how long we paid that extra $6. But after I saw that, I had completely forgotten about that opportunity. I thought, gee, it's too bad they're not still doing something like that because that was such an easy way for us to afford, that project. So hopefully if they've just so you know, they've done something like this before. So if they do it again, I think that would be great.
How long ago was that?
Well, we moved into our house in 1982, so it was probably during the 80s sometime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thanks. Hi, Paul.
Yeah, couple questions. With regards to residential energy efficiency, what would you say, what are the top 3, type of projects that, you find yourself funding?
So without a doubt, heat and cooling is our biggest one. So we have some of the larger heat and cooling companies that run financing through us. I would say our second biggest one is probably
heating and cooling. Is it equipment then? You know,
Yeah.
like a new air conditioner or a new furnace or.
Exactly. Yeah, that's our big one. I'd say our second most is, and if I'm just thinking about this as through
Sure.
dollar amounts, is probably solar. Just because solar's so expensive, you know, that it's typically a $20,000 job, where a heating and cooling job's typically $5,000 or $3,000 to $5,000.
And yeah, does like insulation, is that, or windows or?
Well, windows would be probably a close third. Insulation, funny enough, we don't do a lot of insulation, and I feel we have insulation contractors that use us, but I feel like the ticket, the size of the ticket is small enough where people pay for it and don't finance it. So, insulating your attic might be $1,200. People can come up with that typically. So we don't see a lot of the financing out, but we love our home performance contractors that do the whole house approach to it. I mean, there's some really big energy, because we track all of our energy savings within our contractor portal, and we get the most energy savings per job from the home performance contractors, where they do air sealing, insulation, and HVAC, and you name it.
All right. Yeah, very good. Thanks. Good to know. And then just the other thing, here we've been hearing about the need to increase the renewable energy cap, because tying into the grid, the utilities can limit the tie-in to 1% of their generation. And yeah, is that an issue for you folks, or are you hearing, are we bumping up against that 1%? Is it?
Yes, it's certainly on our radar. My counterpart, Pat O'Boyle, he's a member of the Great Lakes Regional, it's GLREA. It's a renewable energy association, and we are actively trying to get rid of that cap or raise that cap, from 1%. I know I think you're talking about Consumers Energy, because I don't think DTE's there yet, but Consumers was coming close to that cap where they can just turn off all residential solar if they wanted to. I don't think they're going to. The MPSC is probably going to have something to say about that when it comes in, the Michigan Public Service Commission. But yes, that's definitely on our radar. It will affect the solar industry, which obviously will affect all of our not all of our contractors, but a good portion of our contractors, and what we're doing as a company.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Just wanted to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. Julie.
Yeah, so Paul just made me think of something, and that's, about the conversation of HVAC systems. One of the things we're hearing about is electrification, moving from the standard, well, for our area, the standard natural gas furnace systems. And I wonder, have you heard about anyone moving forward on the heat pump technology? And do you have contractors who are already advertising those, moving forward on them? I just wonder, is it here yet?
Yeah.
Even if it's in a small way.
It's coming. I feel like it's a big wave that's coming. I don't feel like we have enough contractors that are knowledgeable. We do have contractors that do heat pumps. They do, most of our contractors will do a heat pump, but it's typically a swap out from a heat pump that was already there. So when you're making that electrification case where, and just so you know, in our company, we have these, the things we call ROKs, right? So we work on them every quarter, and I just took on this electrification ROK. So we're going to be doing an infographic and coming up with a bunch of information, working with the city of Ann Arbor has done a lot on electrification. And we've been working with other partners on this to figure out the best way to do it. And in a nutshell, when you switch from natural gas to a heat pump, there's two. I mean, you have to have somebody who knows how to size that system correctly. But the two main things you really have to take into account is the size of your duct system, which was designed for forced air, not for a heat pump. I mean, a heat pump is forced air, but it heats at a different temperature. So you need more airflow. So your duct system would have to be modified in order for your house to heat evenly with a heat pump. And then you also have the increased electrical load on a lot of the older houses. You got to, go up maybe to a 200 amp system. And that also adds to the cost of it. So we feel like Michigan Saves is perfectly positioned to help out in that regard, because the switchover is going to be a little bit more expensive than just, changing out a $3,000-4,000 heat pump. There's a lot more to it. And I feel like there's going to have to be some sort of a process or an audit that happens so that we don't have contractors that are out there just doing the swap out and it not performing correctly, right? We want it to be done right. And I think if it gets done wrong, we're going to have, it's going to get a bad reputation, and everybody's going to just say, forget about heat pumps. And heat pumps are a gateway, one of the main ways we go to a zero carbon energy system.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it sure did. Although when you said a wave is coming, can you talk a little bit about that? Is it because you have counterparts in other states that you're hearing from, or some other way?
Yeah, so we just the Building Performance Association just had their yearly conference, and it was just like this, where it was a Zoom meeting, which was unfortunate because I really loved that conference. But there was a lot of people that were so one of the things we noticed is that there was a lot of sessions on heat pumps and decarbonization, heat pumps and contractors, heat pumps and duct systems, and it was all over the place. And there was a lot of presenters that have been in the business for a long time. So it wasn't just the contractors, it was the manufacturers, and they're all making improvements to the refrigerant, to cold weather heat pumps, which are relatively new, and it's all coming. And everybody's saying, listen, if you had to go pick a business to start right now, you should make yourself the heat pump person, because it's going to be, there was a lot of talk about it being incentivized, and that electrification was going to be incentivized, and it was all coming down the pipe. So that's when I felt like there was a big wave, and there was a lot of people that were in the Pacific Northwest that were had entire companies of 30 trucks that were out there doing heat pumps. And in California, there was a lot of activity out there as well. And I felt like it was coming to Michigan. And, one of our largest contractors is Randazzo Heating and Cooling. And we just talked to them, and they said they had an increase. It was surprising. They don't know why it's happening, but there is an increase in people switching over to heat pumps. So I feel like we're just at the very beginning of what's coming.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, great. I really appreciate the time, everybody. Thank you. And do you want me to leave my info in chat, or?
Sure, that would be great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
For the folks at home, how could they find out more? What's the web resource?
Oh, yeah. So our website is michigansaves.org. And you can find all of our, rate sheets, and there's a contractor locator if you're looking for a contractor in your area that does Michigan Saves. It's a really helpful resource.
Thank you.
And this is my cell number that I'm giving you, so you can text me or call me or whatever you want.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us and giving us all this great information, and all of his contact information is in the chat now.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
So on to the next thing is our public comment, and I see that there's some more attendees that have joined us.
Yeah, let's see. I guess I'm gonna, well, I think these are all for our next item, so I'm gonna promote them all in, and we can ask them that way.
Is there any public comment that's separate from the community garden discussion? Okay. Then I guess we'll just jump into the community garden work group with Tom.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah,
And I think you sent me a graph.
yeah, I didn't know if I could share my screen or not.
Yeah, I think Aaron can.
Oh, okay, I'll click share screen then when I'm ready. But yeah, my job was to assemble this sort of ad hoc committee, and we looked into places where we'd like to see a community garden in Royal Oak. That's the essence of what we were working on. We also identified a lot of people who are experts in gardening who could lead instruction and this and that once we get to the point. But most of the people who were interested in sinking a shovel in the ground this spring, they by far most of them were right around 13 and Crooks. And let me well, I've got host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you show that graphic, Amanda? I was just going to show that chart that showed people's responses to our site survey.
Actually, I don't think I have abilities to do things.
I think Carol did, but
Oh, she did.
yeah.
Okay, no big deal. I'll just read. But basically, we had about 80 people or so respond to our survey, indicating where they would like to garden if they could do it this spring. And by far, the three sites that had the most responses were, when we listed Royal Oak High School on there just in case it wound up being a site, but Royal Oak High School, Warden Park, which is that area just west of the Lindell Ice Arena, and then Star JC Park at the corner of Murray and that corner that's got sun in Star JC Park. Those were by far the most popular. So right around 13 and Crooks was where most of the people who indicated an interest were interested in doing something this spring. After that, 32 people were interested in Churchill, 21 people interested in Exchange Park, and then 21 people interested in Salter. Lockman Park, 25 people. Bassett Park, 24 people. But that's where the question was: where would you sink a shovel if we got started this spring? And that's where people indicated a reason. That's why when I talked to Aaron, I asked about Lindell Ice Arena, just west of the Lindell Ice Arena on that big patch of grass right there. We've got a group of like 84 people on our email list, and then some overlap, but 100 and some in our Facebook group. So we found a significant number of people interested in doing this. I think if we launched this, we would have no trouble filling the plots with all the people we would need it. And as far as going forward, I think job one would be picking a site, because there's really nothing to do if we don't have a place that people could picture doing this at. And as Ann Beachy pointed out, one thing we could start on this year is once we pick a site, we could start killing the grass, doing it in an environmentally responsible way. But, we'd want to start killing the grass this year so that we're ready to plant spring of next year. But that's all I had to report on. There might be some people in the public comment that'd like to add to that or state something.
And I think all those folks are panelists, so should they like to contribute something, they can just unmute themselves and share.
So if you're here for public comment for the community garden and you had something you wanted to add, just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up. Oh, there you go, Larissa.
There you go. Sorry. So just a couple things. The other thing that's really helpful if we are able to identify the site is really just understanding kind of what financially will be needed for fencing, how many plots we could have, which means how much revenue we can generate for the rental of the plots, how much materials we'll need. It'll really allow for the planning that's needed to get it going for next year. And so it's kind of critical to figure out the site location as soon as possible, so we could have and also perhaps maybe do not only killing the grass, but maybe plan for kind of the improvements that we would need in terms of fencing, which is going to be necessary as well. So if we have a site identified, then really kind of the costs, the layout, the how many people we could support with the community garden will follow. And I think the other thought I want to add is that although that site on the just south of the ice rink is the site that's I think probably easiest to move forward with. I think we could accommodate a great deal more people if we were able to have a conversation with the high school or with the school district. I think that's just a much more complex conversation. So at least the Lindell Ice Arena, I think that site is something we can move forward with and kind of pilot it. And if we end up finding an opportunity to partner with the school district, it's just across the street. So that's just what I want to add.
And Carolyn Ludwig, you had your hand up. Did you still want to say something?
No, I'm all right now.
Christine?
Yeah, so what is the next step in, say, getting the area next to the ice arena approved? Does it go to Parks and Rec? I mean, it's not clear what the process is, how we can get to the next step. I mean, ideally, if we were able to make some progress, this fall would be a good time to get started so that, you know, the area would be ready for next spring. So what is the next step? Does anybody know?
So I'll say that from not me so directly, but for some other staff, there's some concern about that location that you mentioned. And so that the idea was, and I know early on we were trying to potentially get a shovel in the ground because with the right momentum and thanks to Tom, it really did take off. It's really impressive how many people got involved in this. That could have been an idea, but you know, from the beginning, I thought that was a little bit ambitious. So I think where we're at now is saying, now, especially in the context that we are going to be doing improvement projects, as of yet, they're sort of unspecified. But what I see is there's the potential that we can wrap this into one of those improvement projects potentially at one of the parks. In which case, then we wouldn't have to make considerations for things like water. Like right now, when you're scouting locations, some are better than others because of what they have access to or not. This would provide us the opportunity that we could set it up appropriately the right way. And with the appropriate plan, actually from the get-go have all the appropriate amenities that we need there, including fencing and everything else without having to sort of hold a bake sale to do it, if you know what I mean. So we're in that process, and that's going to be part of our deliberations among staff as we're looking to do this. And I hope that once those conversations start in earnest, I can bring something back to this board about a really good, firm public location. Now, that said, that's, you know, and then with that, there's the process that's involved, and it's slow and frustrating to many, but it's purposeful because it's, you know, a public thing. Alternatively, we could get this thing going sooner if we could find a private partner that's willing to use land to do that. You know, I don't know. Apparently, there's not too much willingness for that. That doesn't really involve so many decisions to be made on the part of the city. We would certainly still want to be in a position to assist in something like that, but that could happen faster for sure.
And I talked to John Fideli about his reservations about using the square of land west of Lindell. And it's not actually used for anything right now. But his concern was a lot of people use that parking lot. A lot of people walk through there, and he was anticipating that if we did have a garden there, it would be vandalized frequently, which is which is a reasonable fear. Yeah. When we were looking at that, we realized that's a busy spot, but we thought, oh, that's good because it'll help publicize the thing, and it might even encourage other people to start gardens or to push for a garden in their own neighborhood.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit slower than what we had expected, maybe to where we'd want to be right now. But on the bright side, you have this incredible group that you've helped bring together. So, really appreciative for that.
Is there an expected timeline for, to keep the group together, like that you think you'll be able to find a place, or you could bring back any information on the next steps?
So I guess I don't understand the question.
You have to find the site, right? Like the staff is going to kind of look for that site now.
Well, yeah, we're going to have staff discussion about potential projects and things that we want to do for improvements. And so where that fits in with the context of that, yeah, I think we can find opportunity there. Where that is specifically, I don't know. Those conversations are going to be starting in earnest here in the next couple of months. So I think that by the fall, when we reconvene after, our little pause, we'll have far better information to share, or not, I guess, but we'll be chasing it down.
So there won't be any news until the fall?
Well, in a formal way in this meeting, I suppose. I guess I don't know. We haven't even scheduled the conversations yet among staff across all departments about projects and things. That hasn't happened yet. So I would hesitate to say how long those conversations might take or when precisely they would begin. The latest that would happen would be the fall, I would say. But that would still provide us time to handle other portions of the project in preparation for a spring build.
I'm just wondering, is there anything you'd want this group of people to do over the summer? Because if not, we'll lose them if we're not working on anything.
Well, to keep an eye out for private opportunities for land, I think that would still be something that we should actively be doing all the time. But beyond that, until we get to that point, I mean, obviously share information that they have. I mean, I'm sure there's an email group that might just be some good FYI type stuff that we can share. But I would just encourage the group to stick together and to be patient and hopefully be as willing to help later this fall as well.
Hey, Aaron, I guess this is Woody. I have a quick question. Is there a potential opportunity for a hybrid approach? And what I mean by that is where we're able to identify improvement projects that we know are happening that may be adjacent to private land, where the landowner may be willing to contribute land, but they're really not interested in doing anything else. It's still, the logistics of it are still part of the improvement project, but the land itself is the private landowner's land.
Yeah, that's entirely possible where you have land use agreements. And I don't personally have experience in that, but we have a team that does. So yes, if we were to find that opportunity and it was just a matter of sorting out the particulars, there's the potential for that. Yeah, we have the resources to do that.
So I think what would be helpful then maybe is for all of us to know where would be a good resource to go see maybe a list or some sort of database of where those potential improvement projects might be happening, just to see what sort of private landowners might be adjacent to those as a possibility.
I would pay attention to the budget sessions that will be occurring here. So I'd pay close attention to those.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. And then subsequently, when the budget's done, that would tell you what made the cut. So,
Would the prioritization that the group did, including that ranking that was read out, can that feed into this process that you're discussing in terms of where things will happen? I mean, the group came together and kind of took some time to look for these sites. So can that prioritization at least come into the discussion at some within the staff meetings?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. All of their work will not be for nothing. That will be carried through for sure. 100%. Yeah.
And I don't know if you could share a couple of what are the specific concerns about that site that was the #1 preferred next to the ice arena? Just out of curiosity.
Well, vandalism for one, and just, to the extent that in some parts of it, he seemed to think that they did use it. I hear conflicting reports about that.
I called him. He agreed. Nobody uses that site. It's not used for soccer. Okay. It's just people walk through it all the time, but nobody actually uses it to play soccer on.
Yeah, and the thing is that I think if we had a there's a possibility, I guess, to to convince John of that. I suppose if that's really the wisest spot to put it, there's opportunity for that. But respect John's hesitation on that, and I really defer to him on that. And so I am not in a position where I want to push back on him. I'm going to give him that, but that's not to say he couldn't change his mind, I suppose. But I say he's got his responsibilities, and I respect that. So in any case, we wouldn't be constructing and growing anything there. Well, I guess we could be constructing it, but it wouldn't be a productive garden right now anyway. So we're not.
And I just wanted to add to what Tom had said, that I had said via email when this discussion was postponed. If you were to choose a site like that, again, what I was talking about is the no-till gardening, or just a simple thing that could be done. If you just even spray painted the perimeters, people could put, again, cardboard, leaves, without having to construct anything too much, which may get, okay, if somebody vandalizes cardboard and leaves, we won't get too worked up, but it could start the process of, again, creating a better soil situation without having to do so much digging. And again, if it's not the right time, it's not the right time, but that would be something relatively easy that a big group of people could come together and do to hold some momentum. If even a pilot site could be identified, so we could work on that.
Larissa? Yeah,
thanks, Amanda. So one of the things, and I think Carolyn had, I don't know if she raised her hand again or not, but I want to recognize that. One of the things, Erin, that I haven't heard from you exactly, I don't know that you have a lot of information from the community gardening group that would help inform your discussion with your team. And so I would say that I would like to find out from you what would inform your team's discussion in addition to just not the site. I think that we could, a community garden group can continue to be active in the planning phase by providing you kind of an idea of the site size. If we go with our preferred site, just at least as an example, go with the size, perhaps the cost, perhaps what we see, perhaps the city's contribution versus fundraising contributions versus, revenues that we would use to kind of cover costs, sample agreements for for participation, who we would target. I think all of that information would help inform your decision making. Right now, I think that we don't necessarily have that all organized and in front of you. Do you think that would be helpful to support your decision making and discussion?
It could, and Tom has shared a lot of the shared documents that you guys were working on throughout the process. I have seen parts of that, and I've been in communication with Tom to a certain degree. But so yes, anything more would definitely help our conversation.
Has there been Tom, have you put in a budget at all, or a proposed budget? No. Yeah, and I heard you mention costs and budget, and so all of that, I think, in terms of just even a starting point that we could negotiate around, I think it's really hard. I imagine your team would come and say, well, what about this? What about that? Yeah. And I think we can anticipate those questions ahead of time and have the work group kind of put together something for your review.
So our concerns are, I guess, from the staff level would be if we're going to make a public community garden, and making sure that people have somewhat equitable access to it so that it doesn't turn into an exclusive garden club. And so how do you manage that in a fair way? Because there's really limited space in a garden, and there's a lot of interest. So I feel like, most of the people in this group could probably take up all those spots there. And fair enough, because you guys raised your hands and are volunteering to help get this thing set up. But we got to make sure that's a big concern that we have, among other things. And then in terms of cost, we really can't go anywhere until we know the location, because it seems to me from what I've seen, there's enough variance between the locations that, it would vary whether or not water utility needs to be brought in. I guess certain things like the size of it, you could plan out as far as square footage and that sort of thing. So any information on the best way to divide these up, what best practices are. I've been kind of collecting some information from my counterparts in other communities.
Sure. We hope to give you at least enough information that it could support decision-making and or potential grants, identifying grants that might from the city side. Sure. And so I think equitable access was always on our radar. In fact, one of the other things, equitable access to participating, but also just even ease of accessing the plot for, let's say, older adults or other folks with disabilities. That's why those sites that we identified also provided that kind of access as well. So I think that we'll put something together. I appreciate, Aaron, you kind of talking me through some of the things that we need to hit on. And if there's any other thoughts, if you could pass those on to Tom, and we could start working on something that would at least be a starting point for the conversation. Fair? Does that sound?
Yeah.
Woody?
So I guess want to follow up with that in terms of Aaron, I think your staff's resources are obviously very limited. So I would maybe seize this as an opportunity to kind of maybe be able to deliver to the community garden group a good list of the areas of concern for one thing, but information needs that you have, right? Because the way my mind sort of wrapping itself around this is, if the working group is able to sort of put together the operational plan, that sort of will contain all the information that your staff will need to sort of move it through the process a little faster, versus your staff having to sort of figure out a lot of those operational details, whatever it may be. So I would just say, in terms of once the staff starts to have those conversations, the detailed information about the project itself, rely on the working group to do all that legwork for you, just to be able to utilize your staff's resources most efficiently. But also it keeps that group engaged still, so they don't feel like, even though the schedule is being elongated, we're not losing steam. We're just, now we're having to rely on them for some of the detailed information, I guess.
Yeah, so, okay, I guess I wouldn't want to say that in between, what would I ask in between, not to do anything. By all means, this information would definitely be helpful to us. I would caution that at points throughout, then I would, probably want to touch base with staff. You guys would want to touch base with staff because what I fear is that it takes a life of its own. It gets really far, and you guys have the dream garden, but we haven't talked about some of the other things. I mean, because each location might have specific issues with it. The other thing I forgot to mention to Larissa's question is also, and this would be something that staff would facilitate, but the concern with neighbors, because no matter how well a neighborhood might be open to the idea, the one house that backs up to this is going to be the one that has the issue with it. And then, not that we can't work through that, but that's one of the challenges. And you'd be surprised how many people that are perfectly green want gardens, just not behind their house. And I guess you might know that better than I, having talked to the community more on that. So to your point, Woody, I guess, did you have a question at the end of that? I mean,
No, it was more of a statement in terms of just as you're moving forward from a staff perspective, lean on the working group as much as you possibly can with as many of the questions and concerns and things that you have. The example that you just brought up is a great point. If that concern can get, I guess, communicated to the working group as to, what would be a reasonable response to a neighbor concern, whatever it may be. This is sort of shifting from a community-led effort to a city-led effort to a degree, right? And if, no offense intended to anybody, but to get to go ask a neighbor what they feel about a community garden going behind their house, if it's a community-led ask coming to them, you might get a different response than if it's the city coming to them saying, hey, we're going to be putting a garden behind your house. So my point is, I think it still needs to be a really strong partnership between the group from the community that's sort of leading the charge. At the same time, totally understand what you're saying. Like, the city needs to provide some guardrails and, make sure we're managing expectations and that sort of thing. My only point before was just lean on the group as much as you can to answer as many of those questions and concerns as you have, and do all the legwork to be able to help you present, the best story possible from the municipal perspective.
Yeah. If this helps anybody, I guess I just want to air this. I was hesitant to, because it has not been decided, but there's a good opportunity at Exchange Park. Number one, because there's some soccer fields there that probably definitely could use some repair. In the whole park, we want to try some grading improvements. That is one of the wettest parks. We have a lot of wet parks. We don't want to spend money every which place to try it. So we've decided that we would like to do a pilot with some earthwork to improve the usability of some parks. And Exchange rises to the top. It also has some some big swaths of land there that could be used for that gets sun. And then, you know, if we were to do an improvement project there, I'm thinking, well, so let's maybe put in a water fountain that the soccer players could have access to. And while we're there, run a tap so that we would be able to water this thing, these gardens. And then with that, as being wrapped into a project, you could build the fences, the boxes, the whole bit. And so I guess that's sort of what happened with my mind where we're at right now. And so by all means, I do not want the group to stop working on that. I just didn't want to get too far because there might be, you know, and I know that possibly like Exchange Park, for example, if you look at where people live and where they said they'd be willing to work it, that's not maybe the most popular area of them all, but it's a good location nonetheless. So that's kind of what I was hinting at earlier when we're saying that there's some things some possibilities there. Now, I don't want to make any promises to anybody listening at home that we're doing some big improvements at that park specifically, but that is sort of what we were thinking, if that helps anybody. Thoughts?
Yeah, but Exchange Park or any place, if we had a site to rally around, we'd have a focus for fundraising, for finding out who's interested, things like that. But I really think if we're going to move this thing, picking a site is job one, that nothing else is going to happen until we have a site. And if there's just no way to get a city site, then we'll start having to look for other places. I know the whole thing got delayed because Urbane promised us their site and then promptly reversed themselves at the very last possible moment. So that's the big reason why we're not starting this spring, because of that. But we might be able to start looking at some other places like churches or schools or something like that.
Does it make sense to maybe envision perhaps a small pilot using Exchange as sort of the identified site to maybe start fleshing out what some of the issues or questions or agreements or operating, whatever the details around, you know, how we would do this, start to flesh them out on a small scale with a seemingly willing site and partner, understanding, Aaron, that, you know, there's no guarantees that project's going to happen, but it's a starting point, right? And if we maybe do it on a small enough scale, it's easy enough to try to figure out. Tom, you know, it's going to be small and it's a pilot, so not everyone necessarily, you know, will maybe have access to it. But I think it'll help teach us a lot of things in terms of how to do it, maybe at scale at a different site that maybe becomes, you know, identified later on or more accessible later on, or wherever it may be. So maybe that's an option.
Yeah, and there's no danger of hurting things if too many people apply for the number of spots we have. We'll just have a lottery and then that'll be gas to go on in the future. I don't see that as a problem at all.
Yeah, and make it clear that it's a pilot. You know, we're trying to learn and understand how to do this more efficiently or effectively elsewhere. But I'm just wondering if for the working group, maybe that's a good sort of avenue to start heading down, is just envision if they could do something in Exchange Park, what would that look like? That starts to form sort of the information that then Aaron would need to kind of combine with anything they're putting together for the improvement project, just on a small pilot scale. You know, like I said, just kind of going through that will help answer a bunch of the questions that are going to come up anyways, anything bigger.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that as far as like saying we have Exchange Park until we actually do have Exchange Park as a site. I wouldn't want to say that. You know, I think we have to have a site in hand before we can start rallying people around it. I don't think there's any planning to do until we have a site.
You know, at the first site, the sign of us having something identified, I will share it with the group. I don't want to speak too soon though. So, but you know,
Aaron?
who's asking? I'm sorry, Larissa. The asking for other tasks. I mean, I guess when you look this up, there's any number of ways that you can configure these beds, raised right off the ground, so far off the ground, however many of them. I mean, if you guys want to draft out what you think is most feasible with that and share that and provide that to us as something as a guide, at least, to work with, because I mean, there's a ton of possibilities with how you want to slice that.
Certainly, I think our working team has already been thinking about that. But Aaron, I think what I think would be really helpful, I think where collaboration usually succeeds is if it's fulfilling everybody's purposes. And if you are working have plans or tentative plans in Exchange Park or any other parks, is there an opportunity for our working group to kind of do a check-in at some point as you're making those determinations, so we could perhaps then identify where you're moving forward with some of the improvements and where we can then piggyback on that effort. Because I think that's going back to Tom's point. Really, we could play with raised beds. We could tell you what they look like, what, we already have kind of the kits that we would use, et cetera, in mind, and have costs probably could make that determination. But can we maybe have a check-in with you and your team about when you're moving forward with those improvements and see how we could dovetail with those efforts?
Yeah, you guys can check in with me whenever you want about any subject. I mean, I'm here for you guys, right? But that said, I wouldn't move on anything or advance anything without, knowing Tom's involvedness in this group, not just the subgroup, the volunteers, but the board itself. All of that would definitely come out. It wouldn't be planned and kind of all throughout. There would be communication for sure.
Of course.
Okay, is there any other comments? Because we're kind of running low on time. Okay, well, thank you everyone in the community garden and supporting this project, and we'll keep moving it forward. Okay, on to the next thing is the Royal Oak tree canopy. Anne?
I don't know if I should start or should Aaron start, but basically I had emailed the Environmental Advisory Board. I was trying to remember, it was in 2019. And in response to my email, then I had followed up and I had prepared a kind of a very brief concept paper about Royal Oak shifting towards an urban forest management perspective rather than just seeing the trees as random. And in that, I had suggested that we think about celebrating the trees, protecting them, and then proliferating or planting more. And I have to say, and then during the pandemic, I've become Aaron's best friend and I keep emailing him about the trees. So we've engaged in a dialogue and I volunteered to give him some in-kind time. And so what we've been talking about now with some other input is focusing on the tree planting as one of the big pushes and looking at trying to develop a 3-year program where we would shoot towards either planting 500 or now Aaron likes to hear even better, 1,000.
No, that was somebody else said that one. I'm skeptical.
No, Melanie Macy said it, and I said it previously the last time you and I talked directly. So we're working on the numbers, but with the idea of diversifying the trees that are in the community, getting into more native trees, and we're focusing right now on tree planting that would be along the curbside, primarily in places where there are big gaps, and conducting some both research with some supportive consultants, but also engaging citizens in both looking at where the tree gaps are, as well as the species, and then also looking towards creating not just an interest in, yes, I'd like a tree in front of my house, but I'm proposing a cadre of tree guardians, or we were talking about different names, but people who are saying, yes, I commit to both learning about helping with the trees, as well as maybe taking care of the one in front of my home, but then looking towards how we could expand that group and looking to help make sure those trees that get in the ground have that 2 to 3 year care that they need to really get growing. And so we're talking with communications about both surveying, but then also perhaps like signage about this tree is being taken care of. And so kind of creating a real community spirit around the new trees. And then of course, I'm very much engaged in how we can talk about how we better make cutting down trees the last resort, not the first thing we do when they're getting tired and old. So I think we're progressing well. And I think more and more people are coming into the fold. And then as the different steps get underway, I think we'll just keep coming back. And I hope, Aaron, I'm doing what you had hoped I'd be doing for you.
I didn't hope you do it. I didn't know you were going to be the guest on it, so I was going to make a couple comments, but you summed it up really well, Ann.
So
I just want to make sure it goes with what you're thinking. Okay.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yep.
So what I was thinking is that we could maybe make another working group of people that would be interested in supporting the tree initiatives. I know that we can do some policy that might have to go to the commission. And as a board, this being more on our radar on a monthly, at our monthly meetings. So is there someone that would like to kind of lead that for the Environmental Advisory Board and work with Ann and Aaron in that initiative?
I have a question.
Yeah.
This sounds like it would fit perfectly with our climate action plan and our sustainability plan. And I'm glad that I know the way that things get done is work groups, but I'm also hoping it doesn't get siloed off into, its own thing and that it's part of that bigger picture. And I know we'll hear from Julie on updates on those plans, but I'm just curious, does this fit in with that plan? And I am willing to work with you, Ann and Aaron, on this.
So yes, it does. We do have a green space part of our focus of the SCAP. And actually Ann joined that group. So that's how we really started talking about the trees. So it won't be siloed, but we can start working on implementation now instead of having to wait until the end of when that plan's put together. I think there's some things that we could probably get done now instead of like next spring or something like that.
Can I
For
make
sure, it has to, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you need a working group per se, or if you want to just keep a standing report. And then as things come up, I can email and ask for people to work on things. Because again, when Aaron first talked to me about the trees specifically, again, my personal preference would be to have kind of, again, a program and some things, and then identify where we have needs and then plug people in, not to run off. I mean, I'm happy to keep funneling all of it through, but I hate to just make another group just to, I don't know if it's,
well, what we,
I
I'm
don't know.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think what we could use help with from the advice of the group, because really this is a tree purchase program. I got to work through the details of how we purchase trees, right? That's pretty simple. You find a nursery and then they, even for an added cost, will plant the tree for you. But it becomes a little bit more complicated when we have, like in our case, we want to diversify our species and re-examine. There's some trees that aren't permitted on right-of-ways. But that would be because, if you planted them in mass, they would cause issues to a sewer system, maybe because they have some sort of a small fruit that they make, but otherwise are a really good tree. Well, we can make exceptions for that. And that's what I want to study on that. But really, operationally, it's simple. We have to ask for the money, source the trees, and get the labor to plant it. And that's what we're working on. We can get help with that. I think the bigger thing is going to be community engagement, working with Judy Davids and finding where these gaps are through a survey, employing some of our GIS information. But that's relatively simple. The other tasks that will involve the board potentially was getting at what Ann was talking about, sort of a longer care program generally for city-owned trees, what that looks like. And then also changing the criteria, I guess, of when a tree is removed. I would argue that we're not tree happy about removal, but people that live in the subdivisions would tell you, in these neighborhoods would tell you otherwise. I think we're really prudent about how we take trees down. Ann would disagree, but that's okay.
So some of these things that you're talking about are more policy based, and some of these things will be even with the SCAP are going to be, worked out even further. So that's why I feel like it should kind of go through the board, not as just extra work for us to do or whatever. I mean, trees is the number one thing that people come to me about. So I do think that it has a natural fit here if you want that to be, but some of these things are policy. So I would assume that they should flow through the board a little bit.
They would, yes.
Well, if you want to do a working group and if Jennifer wants to volunteer and we start, and then since I'm also in the other group, we can start with an eye of merging it with the green space plan.
Yeah, so we don't want, so I think what, just to save time, we don't want the tree to be part of the SCAP planning.
Oh.
So that's what I was trying, it was great that, we talked about it at that, but I think there's going to be a lot that we have to talk about with just the planning and the plan and the work for, all the parts of that we don't want to spend time talking about trees there too. Though trees are part of the plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so keep it sort of separate. That work is separate. Yeah.
They will join.
Yeah.
But really the sustainability is planning for the plan and for all the work groups and all that. That's what it is right now.
Yeah, so we won't lose sight of that. Yeah. That definitely, it will get wrapped into that. But there's a lot of effort involved in it that you're right, it should be separate in terms of meeting and hammering out the details. But that's not to say none of it gets shared or brought through the EAB.
Aaron, Bradford Parish still approved median trees?
No,
I believe, no.
no.
Okay,
Not on
well,
the list.
they were in 2018, so
Yeah.
I got a list of 8 approved median trees, and they were still on there. So they've been removed since
Oh,
then?
yeah, they've
Yes.
been removed.
All
They
right,
damage way too easy.
I'm
wonderful.
on the planning commission. I'm the one woman, well, not just one woman, but I'm the leading the charge against Bradford pears. Every developer that comes in, I look at the landscaping plan, and I think now the planning staff has tipped them off because we don't even see them on landscaping plans anymore.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. I'm a big supporter of that action. Is it possible someone could send me a list of the current median approved street trees at some point?
Yeah, well, the street trees, we have, there's a couple that are prohibited, but more or less, the trees are selected based on what stock is available for that coming season from the particular nursery.
Right, do we have that for this
Standing list
season?
that we only approve these. We kind of plant what we have available based on, and then based on criteria about whether they fruit and all kinds of other stuff. I could show you the list and I could share it with the group of what we offered this year.
Okay, that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit confused in terms of, going forward. How do we keep this momentum going? How do we, have some actionable items as it relates to our tree engagement and yet, also then, weave it into, the green space focus work group of the sustainability and climate action plan.
I think what we could come with, the product will be a planting program. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, once that's established, that just gets woven into that as it is conceived. It gets put in there as part of the plan, if I understand that, right? Correct, Julie? Yep. Is that, yeah. So it's as simple as that, I think. Because really what this isn't coming up with a philosophical statement on anything about trees. The goal is plant a whole bunch of trees over a period of time. We don't want to do it in 1 year because we know what happens when you do that. It's as simple as that. However you want to weave it into the SCAP and everything else is fine by me. I want to hammer out the details to operationalize and get trees planted by springtime, a whole bunch of them. So I guess I don't know where the question was going, Paul. Like what?
My goal is a little broader.
Really,
yeah, I think that we can do more than just that.
I think, Aaron, that's why I said we're at the planting part, and I'm happy we're going to proceed with that, and we're going to get that going. But on my bigger plan are the policy issues in the parks and some other things, but we're not there yet. So right now we're at the planting. We're focusing on the planting, and the next step that he and I and Melanie and Judy, as I say, to think to draft some input about for citizens looking at where the gaps are. Kind of that tree survey to understand what the city already has and what we need to do in updating where the gaps are. But then, as I had mentioned the other day, is again to have a preliminary list and see if we can get a more proactive list of trees that we want rather than just picking from whatever a nursery has in stock, to get at the more native and a diversified, again, staying within the bounds of what's reasonable given the sewer systems and those kinds of things. And so we're just at the current step we're at is to look at that potential list of trees, which again, we could circle back through here for your next meeting if you want. But the process right now is to engage, to get in the trees, to put in the ground, and then to have the citizens work on them. And then all of those other things on policy and such, which are in my document, but we're not quite there in terms of working on it, but that will stay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I'm just saying that from the view of this committee or this board, I think those will come up as we proceed.
Yes.
And then these things will then be worked on also, or will be brought to that work group for the green space, So
yes, but my plan, if it goes according to, this would be the green space. I guess you could weave that in to say this is what we're doing. But ideally, the product I want to get to is a proposal to take to City Commission to ask for the money and ask for signatures on the contracts for the labor to plant and the purchase of the trees for springtime. That's my singular focus. That has to be it because, obviously we got to find out where we want to plant them. I don't think that'll be a problem. I think there'll be plenty of people that want trees. But how we work through that, yes, definitely need input. But from my perspective, the big heavy lifting is making sure that that project can get lifted off. And that is coming up with something that I can present to the city commission and make the ask for. That's, to me, the big goal. But to Ann's point, yeah, there are a lot of policy discussions that go with that, particularly with ongoing tree care and removal. The planting, there are going to be some questions about how we administer that, but it's pretty simple. You want a tree, you get a tree, you know? And I mean, we would have some idea of how we wouldn't, you know, be, you could select any tree you want. It would be pretty directed by the city or this group. I mean, we'd say this is the tree you get, or what's your preference, but you can sort of get what you get. Makes it efficient, makes it cheaper, makes it possible for us to potentially plant 1,000 trees. So
okay.
Is that?
Well, let's just put it this way, and whatever you need from the board, we're here to support. And whatever we can help you, Aaron, to support the initiatives that you want. But I think long-term policy, we're here for that too.
All right, I understand.
So, however you guys want to do that.
Message
Yeah,
received.
and oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, if I could just weigh in here. Tree canopy is a priority for the city commission. And we have taken steps to bring funding to that. In fact, we now require real estate developers, if they're removing trees, to replace them at the same total amount of circumference that they're losing. And in fact, the last planned unit development we approved had a $40,000 tree replacement fee in it. So yeah, and yeah. So the commission is committed to this, and and Aaron's department is as well. I want to do a little expectation management here. There are many good ideas here at the Environmental Advisory Board, and there's only one of Aaron and a small department. So as we move forward, if there are additional, Aaron's people can plant trees, buy trees and plant trees. And certainly this group will have ideas on policy, but I also hope that as this group goes forward, we find volunteers to do parts of that work because his resources are finite.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah.
You can pay me later for that, Aaron.
Really?
And so, yeah, I just don't have anything immediately to say, take this and before the next meeting, work on this, come back. We will, though. There will be something to provide an ask. So thank you for that, Commissioner.
Yeah, so I just want to back up a little bit for the bigger picture view about the sustainability and climate action plan. We do have a green space section, and we're going to have focus work groups where conversations about the tree canopy, about programs like a tree champion. That's where we would expect all of this to really have the rubber hit the road with community engagement and outreach. Okay, so getting started right now and trying to understand what those pieces look like, I think it's a wonderful idea. The other piece I want to say is that in our the goals and objectives from the city commissioners for this coming fiscal year, again, we have goal number 8, which is sustainability. So it's where all of these pieces fall. There is an action called increase tree canopy. That's in this fiscal year. So it is not only there, but it's going to be in the SCAP because, I mean, it's a pretty basic goal. We follow the state of Michigan's urban forestry goal of 40% tree canopy. We're at about 30.5 to 31. So we certainly have area to move. And, we get started and start cranking away. So I think, this is a great piece. It's, it will be easy to get community involvement, easy to get community positivity ratings and things like that. So, and then I have some news about tree canopy also whenever it's my time to talk, unless you want me to just blurt it out right now.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I received an email today from Congressman Levin's office. The tree canopy, enhancing the tree canopy for health and resilience in Royal Oak was chosen as one of the 10 earmarks out of all of his district projects to go on to the Congressional Appropriations Committee. So yes, woohoo. And that project, I worked with Aaron to try to understand, what is it that we would want to push for? And it was a number of trees. So, some of the product, but also money to help with the tree canopy inventory, the flyover, where we could have an accurate baseline of what we have, and that will really help us understand what we have to do to move forward to get to the 40% by a particular time. So everybody, fingers crossed that this stays with the Congressional Appropriations Committee, and it's one that is funded. It is a 1-to-1 match because it's part of the U.S. I forget now, Department of Forestry, U.S. Parks and something. And they require 1-to-1. But I talked to Paul Brake ahead of putting this in there, and because it's of such high priority, we will move to make that happen. If indeed, it goes through the second piece and we're awarded that. So again, tree canopy, great. It's definitely going to be in the SCAP. It's in the state of Michigan urban or forestry action plan under urban forestry, and so we'll keep going.
Great. Okay. So I think we should go back up to the report. So Aaron, do you have
Yeah, I'll be
more of your report?
a couple items real fast. I'll be, because I know we're short on time here. But I met with the bees and the D folk today at Normandy Oaks, and we identified the locations for the 2 hives. I don't know if you guys have heard, but the Parks and Rec Advisory Board with the recommended and the City Commission approved those hives. And so we've scouted 2 locations. They're actually right next to each other. There are 2 boxes at one spot. It's easier for them to attend to. And this is good. It's right within view of Stephanie's house. And they didn't plan it that way, but we walked the entire park and looked for the ideal location. And the spot that they found just so happened to be within eye shot of her home there. So that's a good thing. That's exciting. And actually the boxes are there. There's no bees in them yet, but they're physically on site in place. So we're excited about that. Tomorrow, speaking of trees, is the Arbor Day ceremony at 10:30 a.m. at the Senior Center near the Arboretum there in the grassy area. We're going to be kind of chasing down some rain, so hopefully it goes on. If it's coming down pretty good during that time, it'll just be canceled. But otherwise, we're going to try to squeeze it in. If you could make it, that would be nice. Ann talked about, and we talked about our tree program. That was on my list. The next meeting, I hope to bring to you a preliminary refuse cart option that would then subsequently go to the City Commission for your comment or stamp of approval or not. So stay tuned for that at our next meeting. I want to get that done before we're adjourned for the summer, should we choose to do that. And then lastly, next week, we're starting another 30 lead service line replacements. We do them in big chunks. And so give us a couple of weeks and we'll have another 30 pieces of lead out of the ground. So that's all I've got.
Great, thank you. All good news.
Yeah.
All right, Julie, you're up.
Okay, so I'll make mine quick also. Business as usual, lots of balls in the air. We did, like I said, we learned about the tree canopy proposal. We also learned from the state of Michigan Eagle that the LED conversion for the library funding was approved. So that is a portion of the cost of their upgrade. And then I talked with Tom at another event and started, I brought up that bicycle friendly community project again, and Tom has generously said yes, he has interest in helping in some way, helping me get through the application booklet. It is 56 pages long, so it is a thing to behold. If there is anyone else who would like to help us move through that bicycle friendly community application document, please let me know. You can
What does the money do again?
Sorry?
If you get it, what happens again? I don't know if I caught that part.
Well, the minor thing is that you get a designation as a bicycle friendly community. The bigger piece is that to get that, it's pretty daunting task. And it really puts you in a position where you have implemented friendly bicycling infrastructure. So we don't think we can get the designation without doing additional pieces.
Okay, cool.
But
You'd want to
reviewing
get
the
the city to
application
set
is-
it as a goal, you know,
Yeah.
we want to be a bicycle friendly community. If we could get like the city commission and staff behind getting that designation, that will prompt a lot of bike friendly changes. So that's the reason they have the program, is a sort of like a burr under the saddle.
Yeah, and our first step is really to understand, what does the application require, where are we, and what do we need to do, because then we can make the list. So that's all I have. The other stuff is for the SCAP report out.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Commissioner Sher Douglas, it's your turn.
Thanks, Amanda. I'll make this brief. Just a couple of items. So we have made an offer to, and the offer has been accepted by our new city attorney. He comes out of a city of about 140,000 in Texas, although he's originally from Michigan and worked in municipal law in a law firm here. His name is Aaron Leal, and we look to have him, his start date is June 14th. At Monday's commission meeting, we spent some time talking about a new parking system, like super innovative new parking meter enforcement system. This has been very thoroughly vetted. We did an extensive community engagement process with it and really reviewed it with people and got their feedback on it. We're still working out the details. We'd like to bang the vendor over the head a little bit and sharpen our pencils and get maybe a little bit better deal. But I would say that we as a commission, we've been looking at this for like a year. And in fact, Aaron was one of the people who brought us some of the preliminary information along with our chief of police. So that's on the drawing boards. And then I'll just toss out my favorite anecdote of the week. I was talking to one of the city attorneys on the attorneys on our staff, and they said, they said in the past, in a given year, we might prosecute like 5 dog bite cases. He says it's up to 50 over the course of the past year. With, people at home getting a dog, not knowing how to take care of a dog, with delivery people coming to the door and dogs biting them. It's been, it is a dog bites man saga in our legal department. So I thought I would share that as my anecdote of the week, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
I have one. June 5th to the 13th is Great Lakes Freshwater Week, and through SEMCOG. And you sent me an email about them giving you some materials.
Stuff. What do you want?
What do we want to do? Oh, do we get them, or do we have to pick stuff out, or?
We just have to place an order and they'll send it to us.
Okay.
Remember we did this, was it 2 years ago? We got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So
I think we just hung out at the farmer's market and passed it out.
And handed stuff out. But so yeah, I don't have that at my fingertips, but SEMCOG has a bunch of trinkets, what do we have? Water bottles last year. I haven't looked at the list this year. But yeah, if we want to order some supplies, give them away, raffle them off, that's all we have to do is ask.
Okay.
This reminded me, tomorrow with that event, we have a bunch of pine saplings. They're actually really, really healthy this year. They're really good specimens. Sometimes they were really piddly. This is really good ones this year. There's 200 of them. It rains or whatever, and we don't have a good turnout. There's gonna be a lot left over, so we may need some assistance in getting rid of those.
Okay.
You guys want to help? So
yeah, just let me know. I can do that.
Thank you.
Don't forget the mosquito repellent we have at DPS.
Oh yes, thank you. Yes.
We have all kinds of swag.
All right, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right, so the next thing would be the fugitive dust work group, and I dropped the ball there, so there will be an update next meeting. So my apologies, but we will still be pushing that forward. And then now, Julie, the SCAP work group.
Okay, let's see. So I wanted to just mention, you may have heard, we added a new person. Welcome to Ann Beakey to the SCAP group. And she brings a lot of expertise to us. We continue to meet about every 2 weeks, working on different planning documents and planning thinking. But there is a new piece of this, and that is we have started with the Smith Group and hired them to help us with some consulting to move the process forward. So Amanda and I spoke with one of the people yesterday, and they're totally jacked up, to help us. They think we have a lot of great data, a lot of work already done for them. So she thinks it's more a question of moving things around and just organizing what we already have. So that is a thrill. And like I told Amanda, I was totally jacked up after that call yesterday, because it's been a lot of work for all of us on the SCAP, and this really feels like a breakthrough. And so I'm grateful for that. And it sounds like at least one of the consultants can join us at our next SCAP meeting, which is the next Tuesday, and talk through some of the pieces. And I hope in a short period of time, we will have a more firmed up timeline to share with you all. And also, the firming up of what our community engagement is going to look like. And then I guess the last piece is that Amanda, Paul Weil, and I will be speaking at the Royal Oak Dems Club on Saturday about our sustainability work. So it's another way to get the word out. And I'm working right now to get a sustainability page, a very basic one, up and running, so that we have a place to direct people, so that they can sign in if they're interested, to participate with this SCAP community engagement project in the future. And just ask a couple questions about their interest level. So that's what's going on with SCAP.
Great. Any other updates or discussion for the group? Chris.
I have one quick question for Aaron. Aaron, I keep seeing garbage trucks picking up my recycling. And if you could speak to that, hopefully they're not trucks that also have carried garbage. And what I'm afraid of is, with a lot of people being home during COVID, that other people are seeing this. One of my sister's neighbors commented, "Oh, I just saw a garbage truck pick up my recyclables. I guess they all got thrown in the trash." So, what's the deal with garbage trucks picking up recyclables?
To say that it never happens where they take recyclables and they've thrown it in there, it's happened before on account of a particular, driver on occasion. Rarely does it happen. Most times it's actually a split body truck that doesn't always run the route, but sometimes the way the routes are assigned, rather than have two separate trucks, they put a split body, what's called a split body. And that means there's literally division down the compactor body of the refuse compactor. And so it might look like they are throwing it in the same truck, but it is segregated. There was an exception to that that we found, and to GFL's credit, they handled it. So it has. I will never say that it's never happened, but generally does it. 9 times out of 10, when those calls come in, it's because of the split body.
Okay.
So sure, it's being recycled.
All right, but also it's not being commingled with a truck that's previously had garbage in it.
I can't speak to that. I don't know. I imagine, they empty these, they hose them out. I imagine that they could if they wanted to. They probably do. That's a guess on my part. So I guess I shouldn't.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate that. Like I said, what I'm worried is the more people see that, the more people are thinking that their recyclables just went in the trash. So I don't know if there's a way that SACRA can address that, or if we can get a statement from SACRA that we could put on the city's website or on our Facebook page, because I think people are seeing it and wondering, you know, what's going on. So it may not be like the most critical problem, but I think it would be nice if we just let people know that their recyclables are still being recycled and not trashed.
Yeah, you know, that's good. We changed our content on our website a little bit. We've been trying to be better at the DPS page about putting up new or fresher content. So we can do that. We don't need soccer to do that. We'll have staff do that in the next couple of days.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The only other thing that I had was right now I'm doing Facebook and Instagram. If anyone would like to take on social media, I'm willing to give that up. So you don't have to answer right now. You don't. You can think about it. But I know that Jennifer's doing Twitter, and I've kind of dropped the ball completely on Instagram, and I do post a little bit on Facebook. So if anyone wants to take any of that over, you're welcome. And is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about?
I just have one more quick thing,
Yep.
only because I told my mother-in-law that I would bring it up with this group. She had sent me some information. A friend of hers that's an engineer did some investigative work and did a documentary on Line 5 and some of the structural engineering issues and potential future problems that some of the fixes may have caused, this, that, and the other. And it was all centered around the governor's statement of decommissioning the line by May 12th, I believe was the date. And so there's a few rallies that are happening on May 13th, actually, to kind of just help show support for the fact that we kind of want her to hold strong, and we want everyone to hold strong to that decommissioning sort of ask. I think the May 12th date is a little bit aggressive, but I'm sure everyone, you know, understands the concern with Line 5. Wasn't sure if everyone knew about that date and that decommissioning date that's coming up soon here. And if you want more information about any of these rallies, so they let me know. But that was it.
Yeah, yeah, I would like them. That's something we could share on the social media.
Sure, I will get you the information.
Great.
Or whoever does take over that role.
Right.
Amanda, I just wanted to thank you for providing the online card opportunity for Amanda. That was very, very kind of you.
Yeah. I know that he's been sick for a while, like since the fall. And I knew that she's been dealing with that. So
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn? Our next meeting will be May 26th. And is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Okay, second. Great.
All right, Ms.
Aaron.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Acevedo.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Guntina.
Yes.
Ms. Hartwig.
Yes.
Ms. Herzog.
Yes.
Ms. Lemmy.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Marcelletti. Yeah, I saw him drop off earlier. Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Sarpalas.
Yes.
And Mr. Vile.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned.